Well, greetings, Pastor Eric again from Zion Lutheran Church in beautiful Redmond. It is day 22, Tuesday, May 4th. Good to be with you. And we're looking at Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. Now, he says it in chapter 8, verse 12, but the context where Jesus says that is important. In chapter 7, he went to Jerusalem for the Feast of the Tabernacles. In chapter 7, verse 14, about the middle of the festival, Jesus went to the temple to teach. The middle of the festival of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And that has deep biblical roots because darkness in the Bible universally symbolizes sin and death, and light corresponds to life and holiness and purity. David wrote around 1000 BC that the Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? In Psalm 119, God's word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. First letter of John, we read about Jesus, and John says that in him God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. In Revelation at the end of the Bible, God's light is marvelous. The heaven has no need for sun nor moon, for the glory of God gives it light. And Jesus says in John 8, verse 12, I am the light of the world. Now, as I said, Jesus was in Jerusalem here at the festival of the Feast of the Tabernacles. Feast of the Tabernacles was when the Jewish people would flock to the temple and remember God's deliverance and provision as they were wandering in the wilderness, as God delivered them from bondage in Egypt. Feast of the Tabernacles was a big party where they celebrated for 8 days. They wouldn't work. They would offer sacrifice to God. They would live in tabernacles or tents. That's why it's called Feast of the Tabernacles, because during that time around Jerusalem, they would live in tents that were made of branches of trees. The beginning of the Feast of Tabernacles in chapter 7, there's a pouring of water ceremony to remind them about how God provided fresh water from the rock while they were wandering in the wilderness. Jesus noticed that pouring of water, and he said, for those who thirst, let them come to me, because whoever believes in me, out of their hearts will flow streams of living water. That was in chapter 7. John continues that story of the Feast of the Tabernacles in chapter 8, and they had just started the light celebration in the feast. In the Talmud, which is the Jewish commentary on the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, the Talmud was the commentary. It explained the lighting of 4 ginormous candelabras. The Talmud reads in this way: the young priest filled the lamps of the large chandeliers with oil and lighted them all, even in a place was so bright that its reflection lighted the streets of the city. Hymns and praises were chanted by the pious ones, and the Levites praised the Lord with harps and cornets and trumpets and flutes and other instruments of harmony. They stood upon 15 broad steps, reaching the lower floor of the gallery, the court of the women. And they sang 15 psalms as they ascended, and a large choir joined in voices of them. So you've got these huge oil lamps which reminded the Jews of the pillar of fire that guided them during their wilderness journey. A pillar of fire by night, a pillar of cloud by day, guiding them to the promised land. So for context, John 6 and 7 and 8 is where Jesus presents himself toward as the goal toward which the 3 most significant happenings in the wilderness wanderings point. Those 3 significant experiences. In chapter 6, Jesus feeds the 5,000 with loaves and fish, saying, I'm the true bread which comes from heaven. In John 7, when the water is being poured, the water ceremony, Jesus says, I'm the living water that comes from heaven. And now in chapter 8, Jesus stands beside the massive candelabras and says, I am the light of the world. Now, the reason that context is important is because oftentimes it's so fascinating, and especially the Gospel of John, where Jesus took ordinary experiences that the people were going through, and he transforms and transfixes their view to see something much deeper. Remember yesterday I talked about the two levels in John that Jesus speaks on. One, kind of the more theological, God-centered, almost theoretical, philosophical, theological level, and then the level of the people. Jesus attempts to draw people into that upper level thinking and says, dig a little deeper into your circumstances, see beyond what you are experiencing to the divine truth that can be seen in those circumstances if you transform them and turn your eyes toward God. So Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And in doing so, he gives direction. You want to go toward the light. He gives direction to our lives. He provides protection. The light at night gave them protection because they could see the boogeyman out in the wilderness hiding in the behind every rock. So he offers protection. He also invites them into, in a sense, an imitation, to become more like him, become more like Jesus, and see in our ordinary experiences something very deeply theological. So Jesus, by saying, I am the light of the world, helps us acknowledge our need for the light, our need to turn away from those things that draw us away from God and turn toward the light. Coming to Jesus without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me. Turning to Jesus, recognizing that getting through life is a difficult journey that we're all in, and without a leader, without a guide, without someone who will draw us into the deeper truths of life, we often just get lost. So Jesus invites us to follow him, to imitate him, to come to him, to be lifted up by him in order to connect, in a very real sense, our obedience to his grace, to connect our good works with his power, to connect our righteousness to a radical dependence on following him. So Jesus is that light of the world that he says that he is, offering direction, providing protection, inviting us to imitate his love and grace and forgiveness. Jesus says, John 8:12, I am the light of the world. In the midst of all of those candelabras and everything, they're looking at that, and Jesus says, that's all fine. I'm the true light who comes into the world. Let's close with Jesus calling for Tuesday, May 4th. Meet me in the morning stillness, while the earth is fresh with the dew of my presence. Worship me in the beauty of holiness. Sing love songs to my holy name, and as you give yourself to me, my spirit swells within you till you're flooded with my divine presence. The world's way of pursuing riches is grasping and hoarding. You attain my riches by letting go and giving. The more you give yourself to me and my ways, the more I will fill you with inexpressible heavenly joy. Jesus is the light of the world. You take care till tomorrow, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.